Sponsored by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast rentals in Brooklyn, New York. To find out more, visit their website, jmrny.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and joining me via Zoom today, she is an accomplished filmmaker and the executive director and founder of the Female Voices Rock Film Festival, Miss Catherine Delaloye. Welcome, Catherine.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for doing this on a dark and stormy night.
Very stormy night.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all can hear, but if you do hear some thunder and cracks of lightning and so forth in the background, it's because it's pouring rain in Brooklyn right now. But we're not going to give a weather report. We're going to talk about Female Voices Rock. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about you. So we first met, I think, through Katra Film Series. Mm-hmm. I had moderated a talk that you were doing with Joffrey and a couple of other people. But I want to talk to you about, kind of Female Voices Rock and how that came about. But first, how did you get into this whole mess of show business and craziness? What is your origin story, so to speak?
I started as an actor, which I feel is actually more common than you would think. I'm meeting more and more filmmakers who have the same kind of background. And I moved to San Diego when I was 10. I was born in Geneva, Switzerland. And then I kind of got obsessed with just wanting to be in movies. So at around 15, I started acting and taking classes, and that lasted. And I acted for about 10 years, mainly. That's all I was doing. And about 6 years ago, I moved to New York. And before moving to New York, I had fallen in love with writing, which is what I studied, but I never thought I wanted to do it professionally. And I started writing screenplays. And when I got to New York, I got accepted into a James Franco masterclass, which was my first real kind of experience in working as a screenwriter. And we spent the summer writing a film together, which he executive produced. So that's when I got the hang of it. And then I kind of realized, like, hey, I really want to do this. And from then I started directing and writing short films. And this year I was going to do my first feature, but then COVID happened and that didn't happen. But yeah, that's kind of how I started. I went from actor to writer and then started directing.
What was that film that you did, that you wrote?
With James Franco?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Horror Time, and he hasn't been released, but
okay.
It's done. So.
Do you know when it will be released?
No idea. Hopefully.
Is this a feature film or a short?
It's a feature.
It's a feature film. Okay, yeah. Cool. Well, you'll have to come back on the show when that comes out. Hopefully things will come out.
Yeah, I hope so.
Warner Brothers and Disney are delaying releases, so it's going around this problem. Apparently, this whole pandemic is a big thing.
Apparently, right?
So, speaking of events, you have this film festival. Now, the film festival's been in operation for a couple of years now?
Yeah, a couple of years.
All right, so kind of give me, so it's called Female Voices Rock. What is the festival's mission? And how did it come about?
As a filmmaker, I got really tired of the lack of opportunity I had as a female filmmaker. I kept seeing the percentages of films getting accepted into film festivals by women, and they were very low. It is getting better, but it's still shockingly low, the amount of films being accepted by females. And then I started Female Voices Rock as a way to just be able to find opportunities for other women, because I felt like I didn't have them. And then I just wanted to create something that would be able to promote and just offer opportunities. So I went into this mission of starting to meet different people, and I started connecting with different industry executives and people I could never meet, funny enough, as a filmmaker, because they would never answer the call for me. But as soon as I approached them as a film festival, they started getting in touch with me, and that's how I was able to line up the judges and have all the opportunities I now have available for other filmmakers.
This was a couple of years ago that you started this. Now, the plan, you're going to do something this year. You're going to go virtual this year, correct?
Yeah, we're going to do it virtually.
Just give me the dates real quick for that.
So I'm actually planning to do it the entire month of October.
Okay.
So it's, instead of doing it like a 4-day sort of thing, I want to probably do it every single weekend, starting from the first weekend of October. So we can space it out, and I'm planning to have panels throughout it and to be able to showcase a lot more films that I could do in real life. So we're planning to program around 70 short films.
Excellent. So if you're looking for, for people to submit to this, now it's got the word female in the title, so I'm going to assume that there's probably has to be a woman somewhere in the creative team.
Yes.
Is that part of it? So give me the rundown, like what is the criteria, and
So,
if you can, give me like what you guys look for in a film.
So the most important thing is that it's a film made with the female perspective, but that doesn't necessarily have to mean that a man couldn't submit, as long as like this, there has to be 3 people in power. So there has to be a producer, a director, or a screenwriter involved, and the story has to be generally, I mean, it can be anything. It can be a horror, it can be sci-fi. We're not only looking for female stories, but they have to be done in a sort of female perspective. So
Right.
That's the main thing we look forward. But we have guys that submit to us because they happen to have a female producer, a female lead, and the story is about a woman. So that's totally fine as well.
Can you give me kind of like some examples of films that you've had in the past, and kind of like maybe some award winners that you had last year or the year before?
So I think our programming last year was pretty strong. We had a drama section that actually upset a lot of people in the audience. And I remember a bunch of women, like older women, came up to me and they started screaming at me because they were like, oh, this is not the kind of films women should be directing. Like, that's literally what they told me. And they were all very heavy topics. There was one film called Just the Drill, which is about a school shooting. Like, great film. But again, it had some very strong topics. Then we had a couple of horror films that were very well done, but strong. And these women thought that our programming should be geared more towards, like what female films, like some people like to call them, which I don't really know what that means personally, but according to them, our programming was very strong and shocking. But I think we just want to do something and show that women can direct all sorts of films, whether it's action, horror, sci-fi. There's not a certain type of genre of film that women should direct.
So that's where the rock part comes
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
So I'm maybe they were expecting like Winona Ryder, 90s, maybe a quilt involved somewhere, or Terms of Endearment, or like kind of a film like that we would associate with that. But it's really, especially now, like there is no there. I think there's definitely a female voice, but there's no female genre. There's not like, because we've had Catherine Bigelow direct war movies and action movies, and people who you maybe, oh, that's not really, we wouldn't associate that normally with a female director, but I think a lot of that stuff's going out the window. I was a little bit cautious because a part of this gig is we go to a lot of film festivals, we cover a lot of film festivals. And it seemed to me that, like, especially in the horror genre, there were like this outbreak of female protagonist films, where like every film seemed to have a female protagonist, and I didn't know if it was like jumping on the bandwagon, but it's always interesting to see like what kind of makes that genuine as opposed to a trend, and who knows how many of those films are actually written by women.
Not
I
many.
think, yeah.
Horror is a genre that there's not a lot of women involved. So I'm hoping to actually do a panel based on like horror, in like women in horror, because there's not many. Like, I can't think of many directors or writers that are actually doing it.
For you guys, is there any kind of one thing that you would say, like if you were going to give tips for filmmakers who wanted to submit, are there pitfalls that you would say to avoid? Or that are kind of don't meet your criteria, or are just bad short films that you don't want to see anymore? I'm trying to spare you some pain in case you get some submissions out of this.
I think as a programming team, what we've been really looking for is originality, like something that sticks out, because you'd be surprised the amount of films that are exactly about the same thing. And I don't want to go into them, but there are so many films like acting films about an acting class, or actors, a film about the actor experience. And as an actor, I can appreciate that, but there's only so many films that you can see about the same topic until they all start looking like the same thing. So I think if you're going to go do a short, try to find a concept that's new, that hasn't been done.
Yeah, the set life film has
Yeah.
kind of been done to death. I've seen them. I've made them. I think maybe there needs to be a moratorium on them for a little bit.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
just so many. Like this season, I've already seen 40 of them, and they're all similar. It's about like the suffering of an actor. And I understand, I was an actor and it's a hard thing. Like I wouldn't want anyone to dream. It's just not a thing that such a pleasant experience, but to see it over and over again, I don't know, like there's other topics to talk about. And even if you want to write about an actor, I would try to see it from a different perspective.
when you say like an original concept, like give me like an original concept from one of the movies that was really like, wow, I haven't seen this before.
There was a film that was shot somewhere in Africa, and it was about the trafficking of young girls, but told in a way it was that I've never seen before. So it was told from multiple perspectives, and it wasn't necessarily victimizing anybody, which is a very different angle to take, but it was just like told from the perspective of the victim, told from the perspective of the person committing the crime, and each of them justifying themselves in a way, which obviously is a very strange thing to say, because usually the short films are all about like, this is the bad person, this is the good person. And since the very beginning of seeing the film, you expect to know what it is. So that was a great film. And I feel like that's another thing I look forward to. I don't like to be fed everything from the very moment. Like I like to have a bit of like a mystery of who the bad guy, who the good guy is. Same with like movies about relationships or abuse. Sometimes it's very much, since the very opening scene, it's like, you know exactly what's going to happen. Like, you know the beginning and you know the end. So I kind of like something where it leaves you a bit, or there's a twist, or there's something that you haven't seen before.
Yeah, I think that is it's more and more difficult to do in a short because you don't have enough time, and it's so hard to get a clear idea across.
Yeah.
Where you've seen shorts with when Joffrey Guerrero was on the show, he was talking about like, yeah, the killer is like a long opening sequence.
Mm-hmm.
It's the opening sequence of a 2 hour film, but the film is only 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
So you're taking the first 2 minutes of your movie and killing it with a long opening sequence, and instead of just cutting to the chase, which
And
a
that's
good
another
short film
thing, like
does.
get one topic. Don't try to make it about too many topics. Have one thing. It's about, I don't know, someone's funeral. It's a bleak topic, and that's it. You don't try to like go too much back and forth in the history. You just try to live one day within the story. I think that's what a good short should do, because it's true you can't get so much in 10 minutes. It can
Yeah,
just
and
become
it's
too
hard.
confusing.
It's not easy to make a good short, and in a lot of ways, it's harder. I think one of the cardinal sins that we talked about is this is a feature idea that I'm boiling down to 20 minutes. Like the Reader's Digest condensed book version of a movie. And I think we've all done that. We've all written that movie. Some of us have made that movie, much to our pain and chagrin. But it's like, no, just take one aspect of it, maybe. Given the circumstances of what's been happening here in 2020, have you seen, or are you expecting, or have you created a category for quarantine, coronavirus, COVID type movies?
We haven't, but I do think next year we're going to have one. So we haven't received anything quarantine related, but I do think most people in 2021 are going to see a category about what we all experienced in 2020.
I'm envisioning a rash of pandemic short films and screenplays and movies made on Zoom. I do think that the circumstances that we're in now, they force you to be creative. You have to think outside the box. There was a project I was going to work on, and then this happened, and everything changed, and I find myself rewriting it to try to fit
Yeah,
the
you have to
circumstances.
rewrite. Same thing with me. Like I'm having to rethink my scripts just to make sure that they still make sense in this like new world that we're living in. But I think it's going to force us to be bold and to
It
take
might, yeah.
chances. And that's the kind of films I like. Like I said, there's too much of the same thing. So this forces us all to think outside the box and think of how to do things differently. I think that's just going to be great for art in general.
So here's a question, and somebody asked this. I was texting a friend about a project, and he said, "Are you going to include anything about the pandemic? Like, are people gonna be wearing masks? Are you gonna show the streets? Are you like? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know, like, if I want that in a movie. But at some point, you're gonna just have to deal with it. Like, it's gonna be part of the filmmaking landscape. It's like when Spike Lee made 25th Hour. It was one of the
Yeah,
first movies that had the fallen World Trade Center in it. This is our new fallen World Trade Center. Um,
basically, yeah.
do you think, you know, given that choice for your stuff and maybe some, do you want to see that in screenplays, or do we want to escape that? Do we
Well,
want like do
I'll
we
ask you
do?
because I wrote a pandemic screenplay. I wrote a romantic comedy during this being quarantined. So I hope someone wants to see it. But like besides that, I did that in a way because I thought it was very cathartic to write about it and to imagine that this thing was happening, this love story while you're in quarantine. So I wrote a feature the last 3 months and I just finished it. So let's see what happens. But in general, like I'm sending it out to people and that's a thought, like, are people just going to be like, this is way too soon? Like, I don't want to deal with this, or are people going to embrace it? Like part of me thinks, I mean, again, depending on the outcome, like if things get better soon, then I do think that people might be able to look back and have parts of it. I don't know if it's ever going to become a genre because I don't know, maybe, I mean, could you imagine there being a whole pandemic genre 5 years from now, which is just films about the pandemic?
Funny thing is, this used to be a genre. We had films like Contagion. We
Yeah.
and every zombie film is essentially a pandemic movie. You know, uh, but now it's real. Like, when your post-apocalyptic disease contagion movie becomes a reality, do I want to see it? I said to the other night I was doing a talk for Contra, and I said it's sort of like love in the time of cholera.
That's the title of my screenplay.
It's like this is like
Love in the
love.
time of
It's
Corona.
like filmmaking in the time of Corona, and what do you do with it? Like it's a hell of a joker to play for
Yeah.
people, And I don't know if I want to see the same reality on my screen that I see outside my window. Especially in cities here like New York. Now, if you're in Iowa, maybe it's a
Mm.
whole different, perspective. But there were movies about World War II shortly after World War II.
And there's
Th-
so many of them. It's such a big genre now.
There were movies about Pearl Harbor, which was a tragic event a few years after Pearl Harbor. So I think you're gonna find either way. There's gonna be some people who want to see it. There's gonna be some people who really don't want to see it and don't
Do you
want to be
think
reminded of it.
do you think if you were browsing through Netflix and you saw something about the pandemic, a feature film, do you think curiosity would take the best of you to watch it? Like I feel like I would watch it.
Honestly, right now, I don't know. Living through this, I mean, I haven't really gone too many places. Like, I haven't been on the subway. I haven't
Yeah, me
like
either.
been too far outside my 2-3 block genre,
Same.
around my house. So seeing a movie that reminded me of that might
That'd be
make
just
you know.
bad.
The thing I find now is, I find a lot of, not just me, but a lot of people, they're watching older stuff. They're watching stuff that reminds them of, a simpler time, but you never know what the zeitgeist is going to be. You never know if people are going to be like, oh yeah, remember that thing that happened a couple of, because maybe by the time that film comes, it's a feature film, right?
Hmm.
So a feature film, it's a bigger animal, so it walks a lot slower. So maybe by the time it comes out, and maybe a couple of years, it'll either be passe because we've had more disasters to deal with, or it'll be like, oh yeah, remember that time? We should, that could be interesting. I really think it also depends on the movie. I
Yeah,
think a lot
but
of
I
it
also
depends.
think when I finished it, I kind of thought that the worst was over. So the
Well,
happy ending of the story does not match reality anymore. Like I ended it in a very like, oh, everything's getting better. This was before anything happened, like before the protests, before all the like just all the things that happened in the world. Like, so I just had to end it because I was like, I can't continue with like reality, because the reality doesn't have a happy ending right now.
And with 2020 being the mountain of unpredictability that it is, you never know. But it'll be, I'm sure it'll be interesting. And there will be people, I think there's probably, for all you screenwriters out there, there probably will be, like we said, there's going to be pandemic film fest. There's going to be isolation, quarantine movies. There's going to be those things out there to submit to, because we're all doing it because we have no choice. Like this, and also like it's just permeating the zeitgeist. Like who doesn't think about this? I mean, besides idiots, like, or who never see the news or in a complete media blackout. Who doesn't think of this? It's just right there on everywhere. But I think it's good to channel that, and even if that screenplay doesn't go anywhere, at least you've gotten it out of your system.
I think it's just that. I think people should just be able to heal themselves however, whether it's writing a script about the pandemic, whether it's doing whatever. And I think that's ultimately what it is. We're all trying to just escape our own brain and our own reality, whether for some people it's getting into a similar reality, but with a different ending. Like, I think it's just important to do whatever feels good for our mental health right now.
Yes, amen to that. In October, so you're gonna do this do you have a virtual network set up yet for it, and like where people can find it, and what can you give me like what audiences will expect from the fest?
Yeah, so I don't want to say the platform that we'll use because I'm still in between a couple of them. I'm deciding, but it's going to be a platform that allows to do everything we want to do, and we're hoping to do panels like kind of similar to the virtual filmmaking summit that we had. So we're hoping to invite some Hollywood executives to join the panels. We're also hoping to do a couple of pitch fests. That's all. Obviously, we're trying to get the people that are willing to listen to pitches and kind of give feedback. And we're going to have Q&As with all the filmmakers. And I'm also trying to do a networking hour, which I haven't figured out yet. But the idea is to emulate kind of the festivals. So we'll see. But that's all in the making. We're going to do our best to make it as close to the real experience as possible.
That sounds very cool. Like that's a BYOB situation. Like we can all have our own champagne and
pretty much
and virtually toast each other.
Yeah, we have to do something. That's the thing. We got to keep living. And right now, I think the safest thing is for us all to be behind screens.
What do you think about the drive-in thing? Because several festivals are doing drive-ins and so forth.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think if you're able to get the funding for it, because that's another thing, I've looked into it, and I would have to go and get separate funding to be able to afford that. I think the prices are like, people are charging around $10,000 a night to do drive-ins, and none of the submission costs would ever cover that. Not even for like one night, So that's the thing. Everyone's putting up their prices, and I think the festivals are able to do that, have some really big sponsors.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think the future of film festivals in general is going to be interesting. You guys are still, you're out of your infancy, you're in your toddler phase now.
We're babies, so we're trying our best. And as a filmmaker, I want to give filmmakers the best experience, because that's the only reason I'm doing it for. I don't want to end up in a situation where I felt in the past like, oh, I submitted and now this was pretty terrible. That's another reason why I started this. I was tired of going to these tiny festivals who just made me feel really sad about it. Instead of feeling happy, I was sitting in a basement watching my film thinking like, wow, like what is the point of this? I might as well have stayed home. So I'm trying to make it justice and making films justice that submit to us.
That's one of the things that we cover quite often on the show when we cover our film festival. We say, is this worth it? Is it worth it to submit your film to, and why? What was the incentive there? And I that's why I always ask people who are who have film festivals, what do you guys really look for? Because I always think about the perspective of the filmmaker and what they're going to get out of it and what they can do with it, and is it going to ultimately benefit their movie? And benefit them? Is it going to be a good networking opportunity? And it sounds like you guys, it's ambitious and you really want to do the right things. Let's hope under the circumstances that you can, because it's not bloody easy for anybody.
It's not. It's a lot of work, and it's all like we're all volunteers in this. Like this is, so we're going to hope to do the best. And also, what I'm really proud of talking about filmmakers is our film festival. Even though we're only 2 years old, we recently got voted the top 100 best reviewed film festivals on Film Freeway, and there's over 8,000 of them. Most who have been around. Like I think I Googled it and I looked through it, and I think the other festivals have been around for like 8 years. So just to make it on that list means to me that I'm doing something right.
So for people who want to submit or people want to know more about you, where can they find you and Female Voices Rock on the web?
Yeah, so submissions are open until August 17th, and you can find us on Film Freeway, Female Voices Rock. Just type that in and you'll find us. Or you can go to femalevoicesrock.com and you'll find us. And you can follow us on Instagram too, or Facebook. And if you want to find me, I'm also on all the networks, on all the social media. Just with my name, you'll find me.
Thanks so much for
you.
being on the show. Definitely, we'll try and see if we can cover the film fest and maybe review
awesome.
some of the films and so forth. Hopefully, you guys can get something going that's great virtually. We're all getting creative and doing our best here, and we appreciate you. And then, hopefully we'll do some more talks with Katra and other things like that as well.
Yeah, when my pandemic film comes out, we can chat about it.
Absolutely. Whenever you have something to plug, let me know.
All right. Awesome.
All right. Thanks so much. And that's all we have time for today. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, including our movie reviews, visit our website, norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And I'd like to thank JMR Rentals for sponsoring this episode. And, of course, I want to thank my guest, Catherine Delaloye. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.